beasts and their men stole the sense from our heads and bound humans in their souls. By divine powers, our souls are ours. Whatever we want, we'll know. Stay strong, all souls. Come and seek truth with me. Stay strong, all survivors. Knowledge will set us free.
Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Bible. It's been 2 months, but it feels like it's been longer than 2 months, honestly, since we did our last Good, the Bad, and the Bible episode. And the last one we did was about the 12 spies that got into, I almost said Egypt, the land of Canaan. And that was a story. And that was the origin of how they ended up wandering around in the wilderness for 40 years. So today we are going to pick up where we left off right after. And we're going to go over a few more of some fun rules that get interjected into the storyline here. And then we have a little story right at the end that's gonna be just the greatest example of God's forgiveness and long-suffering and compassion and all that good stuff. You'll love it, so make sure you stick around for that. We're picking up in Numbers 15. And the first rule we come to is right in verse 14. We're not going to get into a lot of the context of around it because there's a few different things going on that God's asking for with rules and stuff like that, and he gets a little boring in the details. But he takes a sudden twist here in verse 14. Because so far, usually the rules are applying to the Israelites because they're the ones that serve God. Well, this particular God, not other people who don't live with the Israelites or aren't Israelites and don't worship him. The rules aren't usually for them. But that changes here. Verse 14, it says, if a stranger sojourn with you, lives with you, or whosoever is among you in your generations, and they will, it says, whosoever be among you in your generations, whether they are Israel or complete stranger, foreigner, they will offer an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. As ye do, so shall the stranger. As ye do, so he shall do. One ordinance shall be both for you of the congregation and also for you of the stranger. As ye are, so shall the stranger be. So what you're telling me that if some foreigner comes in who worships a different god, and let's say they have the same type of setup where they're not allowed to worship other gods or sacrifice to other gods. Like they're allowed to be respectful of other people and their beliefs, but they're not allowed to worship other gods, same as the Israelites are not allowed to worship gods foreign to Yahweh. What if that's the case? You're saying you're going to live in this country, fuck your religion. You got to sacrifice to my God. Or get out. That's what I'm kind of getting here. It's not saying to get out, but it goes on to say that the punishment, it's that same punishment that crops up that we're not really sure which meaning goes with. Their soul shall be cut off from amongst their people. So, either they get kicked out or they get killed. One of those two. Or maybe just shunned by all of society. But basically, forced participation, forced religious participation. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you are okay with it or not. If you were a stranger among the Israelites during this time of year or for this particular deal, it doesn't matter how much or how little you know, or if you know nothing at all, you have to participate. Or there will be consequences. It would make me as a stranger want to avoid, like, no offense, but that I wouldn't want to go to a country like that. And I would love. The way I'm glad Israel is not like this now. I feel much better about if I ever had the chance and opportunity to go visit Israel. I would be down for that. But Israel back in this time, where I'd have to, where like if I went there now as a tourist and they said you have to participate in our Sabbath and our religious stuff, I'd be like, I'm gonna spend my money and go tour in a different country. That's not gonna force me to participate in their religion that I don't know anything about and don't understand. It's not about disrespect or anything. It's like it's just like you. Why do you have to force people to participate in your religion? Why? And then threaten them if they don't. Like, why can't you just live and let live, Yahweh? But then we move on to the next fun rule. The next interesting law that we come to it is called the sacrifice for the sin of ignorance. Now, in case you don't know what the word ignorance means, it means to not be aware, to not know something. So, what this means is this is a sacrifice for someone who commits a sin and doesn't know that they did. And it goes into a full spiel about what to do to sacrifice for someone who sins. Well, once they figured out that they've sinned. The funny thing is like how long do people end up going before they figure out that they've sinned? Like, a lot of people live completely innocent lives until they join a religion, and then it tells them, hey, you're doing all these different things wrong, which Some of them might be, but some religions are more strict than others, and they can tell you, like, you join a cult. There are religions out there. There are levels of Christian beliefs out there that my parents were part of, that were of the mindset that TV and cell phones were of the devil. Literally, I'm not making that up. And there are still religious people out there that are like that. Not as many as there used to be, but there still are. And so religion makes up all kinds of rules. And so of course we have to have a rule here about sins you didn't know that you were making and the sacrifices you have to make when you realize which number of rules that you've been breaking. Oh, yeah, I really, yeah, what? I kept all the 10 Commandments. Oh, well, you didn't know about all the laws about all the different sacrifices. You didn't know about not to pick up sticks on the Sabbath. We'll get to that. You didn't know about, oh, that's right. You didn't know how to dress properly. Oh, you'll have to pay for that. And I'm not really sure what the punishment for it is. Oh, you didn't know. That's in fact that is the next law we come to. Yes, about dressing. God, this God, Yahweh, this version of Yahweh is so controlling of this people that he even tells them how to dress. At the very end of chapter 15, he says, God says to Moses, speak to the children of Israel and tell them to make fringes on the borders of their garments throughout their generations. That means they have to make their clothes for every single generation. They have to do this with all their clothes. That they put upon the fringe of their borders a riband of blue. I don't know if this applied to every single piece of cloth like that they wore, or like just like their pants, trousers, whatever they wore for their basic outer garment. I don't know. But it says, it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them, that ye seek not after your own heart, and your own eyes, after which ye used to go a whoring. God likes using that term sometimes. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. So wear fringes with blue ribbons. He doesn't say what will happen if you don't. But I'm assuming everyone who doesn't wear the outfits properly had to make a sacrifice of ignorance once they heard about this rule. And I mean, gosh, what about the people who couldn't afford or didn't know how to make or acquire the skills and abilities to be able to, or the person with the skills to be able to create these clothes for them? I mean, not everyone's going to have money. You're going to have beggars and poor people among them that aren't even going to be able to afford the sacrifices for the ignorance of not knowing that they were supposed to have fringes and blue ribbons on their clothes. Like, this is some pretty incredulous, crazy shit that God's asking for here, in my opinion. But then we come to the story, the crowning pinnacle of this chapter. which is not at the end. We skipped it because I wanted to save it for the end and wanted to get all the fun rules out of the way. But for the story, for the story, we have to jump back to verse 30 for just a small handful of verses. Oh, you're gonna love this. Oh, God starts talking about this other rule, which is kind of interesting. That it starts off this way. It starts off talking about a rule, then it gets into a story, so you kind of know. Well, well, we're gonna find out a first-hand example of what cut off from his people means. You remember that punishment, right? Well, in this story, they're going to exercise it. But the soul that doeth aught presumptuously. That word presumptuous, it means, well, it means to do something with boldness, or in this case, it means to knowingly, purposefully break the law. So this is saying, if a soul purposefully breaks a law that God has bestowed upon the children of Israel, this person goes out of their way, they know the law, and they break it on purpose. God says, whether he be born in the land or a stranger. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about that too. The sacrifice of ignorance, yeah, that applies to strangers too. So whatever sins that God applies to the children of Israel, he apparently applies to literally all strangers that travel through Israel. Yeah, but also this one. So if you don't know the laws of Israel and you're passing through, then there will be consequences. There will be a sacrifice for a sin of ignorance you would have to do, in addition to the punishment for whatever law you happen to break that you didn't know you were breaking. But then, if you know the law and then you break it on purpose, if you feel like it's your right, you feel like you shouldn't have to worship a god you don't believe in. You feel like it's your right to be able to worship your own gods, and you want to respect them if they've told you not to worship other gods, and so you refuse. Even if that's all you do, if you break those rules on purpose, this is what the God of this country wants to happen to that person. It says, that soul, the same, whether he be born in the land or a stranger, the same reproacheth the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people. Because he hath despised the word of the Lord, and hath broken his commandment, that soul shall be utterly cut off. His iniquity shall be upon him. And then we have this convenient little follow-up story that goes, while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man. Doesn't say what kind of man. It doesn't say if this man was an Israelite or a Gentile, non-Israelite. We have no idea where this man came from. This man may have been a local, and the Israelites were wandering through where he typically lived. Perhaps. We don't know. We just know that while the children of Israel were in the wilderness. A man. They found a man that gathered sticks on the Sabbath day. Oh no! And they that found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and unto the congregation, and they put him in the ward. They locked him up in their makeshift towable prison, I guess. They locked him up in the ward because it was not declared what should be done to him. Hey, we found this random guy picking up sticks on the Sabbath. We're not even going to say if he's Hebrew or Gentile. We're just going to say that he was a man we found in the wilderness, breaking our laws that we were bestowed upon by our God, that this man didn't know about. Probably. Maybe. Well, given that it's come right after this commandment about purposefully breaking a rule, maybe it's put here to try and hint that this person was breaking the rule on purpose. Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. The thing is, it doesn't say that this man was purposefully breaking this rule. It doesn't say that. Look it up for yourself. It just happens to be the next part. Like maybe this guy was an Israelite and he just missed the memo. He wasn't. Maybe he was sick that day and missed the meeting, and who knows? And maybe he didn't have a whole. Maybe he was like a weirdo and an outcast and didn't have a whole lot of friends, and was nervous about going around and asking about what the rules were. I mean, people like that exist. I'm one of those. I have been that person in the past. And so it is quite likely that this person could have been just an introvert that really kept to himself, and maybe no one liked him, and they said, "Hey, we found this guy picking up sticks." Maybe he wasn't even picking up sticks on the Sabbath. It could have been a random accusation for all we know that wasn't even true. We literally don't know, because all we get is what the verse says. While the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man picking up sticks on Saturday. And all hell break loose. The devil was on the prowl, and that could not be allowed. We just had to throw him in the ward. We didn't know what to do. Oh, Moses and Aaron talked to God and tell us what to do with this terrible, sinful man who would dare to pick up timber and sticks to heat himself on the most holy day of the week. Also could have been an atheist Israelite for all we know. And what did they do? Did they give him the punishment for sacrifice of the sin of ignorance? No. I guess they thought he knew, or they accused him of knowing. We don't know, because that's not mentioned at all. What do they do to him? Does he have to work off his wages? Does he have to serve time in prison? What is the punishment for picking up sticks on to us now would be considered the equivalent of Sunday during church hours, maybe even. What does the God of the Bible want to happen to you if you were picking up sticks on his day? God said to Moses, "The man shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp." And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died, as the Lord commanded Moses. Supposedly. We've talked about, well, okay, we've mentioned the punishment execution of stoning before, because that is a semi-popular execution method for back in the day. I don't know why, but let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about stoning. I don't know if you've ever seen a stoning. Probably not. You've probably never watched someone die. But there is a movie that I will tell you about. You might be able to find it on YouTube. It might be one of the free movies on there. I'm not sure, but it'd be worth a shot looking. I think it might be. But there's an old movie called Barabbas, based on the character in the Bible who Jesus supposedly replaced, who was executed in place of. Barabbas was released, and the whole movie is about this character Barabbas. But in the movie, there is a scene of an execution where someone is stoned to death. And I've seen some depictions of stoning in other movies, but this one is honestly probably the best one and the most, maybe not the most realistic, but it was good. Well, I don't want to say it was good, but it was probably the most realistic that they could have done, considering that it was Hollywood. But getting stoned to death, having you're it's not something that's going to happen quickly. As in, you're not going to die quickly. Because first off, it's the rocks that are available. Think about it. You're in the wilderness. I don't know what the setup is. I don't know if people are coming up and throwing them at you point blank. But in the movie, the way they did it, they kind of had a pit, and there were rocks all around, so there was plenty of ammo for everyone. And they had the person in the middle, and kind of like not exactly a pit, but it was almost like a valley-ish type of pit, small but big enough to where no one was gonna get hit. Almost like it was set up and dug out specifically for that event, so that people could be stoned without this. I want to call them stoners. It's a completely different kind of stoners, but so that the people launching rocks wouldn't hit each other, so that so basically everyone would be like in a circle above, and the person being executed would be down in this little valley area. And that's how it was set up in this execution style. And in the movie, the person getting executed, they didn't exactly react like I think a normal person would react. Um, just because they were, it was like one of the Christians getting, it was like one of the first Christians getting executed. Um, and so it was supposed to be very spiritual and everything. So she wasn't supposed to act normal, I guess. Um, but if you think about it, when you're getting pelted with anything, if you're if you feel like it's in danger to you, the first thing you do is you cover your head. This being an execution, you covering your head and any other vital areas, it automatically delays your death. But it's the natural thing to do to cover up yourself whenever you're getting hit. And in these passages, in these when these events happen, they're saying the whole congregation goes out. Everyone. I don't know if it's only one stone per person. I don't know how big of rocks they have. I don't know if people are allowed to take multiple turns, but it is a congregation thing. They don't have specific executioners. Everyone is involved, pretty much. I don't know if children are involved as well. Hope, God, I would hope not. But I'd imagine in some cases, some parents probably would let their kids throw a rock at the person being executed. But and I mean, and think about the average strength of these people. They're not really strong. They're not all expert aimers. So it is a very generally a very slow and painful death of getting hit all over your body until bones are broken or you get a concussion. And basically the biggest hope you can pray for is to get hit hard enough in the head to where you die immediately, to where you basically don't want to cover you want to fight the urge to cover your head if you want to die quickly when you're being executed like this. It is freaking terrible to think about. And this God, who says multiple times that he's long suffering and patient, full of mercy and forgiving, has someone killed in this manner for picking up sticks on purpose. Perhaps. But even if then, even then, even then, this God feels that this is a perfect way to get justice. To have the entire nation throw rocks at this man until he dies. However long that may take. I don't I don't understand how I don't understand how I could have taken this God seriously, much less anyone else. Like, I don't care how much of a picture it has to it represents of God not standing sin. This is intolerable. Humans don't do this to each other. I mean, God even like it's terrible that God allows, like we've talked about it in previous episodes, that God allows slavery first off in the Bible, and then he is also fine with slaves being beaten so long as they're not killed. But oh, you pick up sticks on my holy day, you gonna die. You gonna die, motherfucker. You gonna get stoned, and not in the fun way. Shit. Imagine if they got forced to get stoned on weed first, and then they got taken out and physically stoned. That would make it suck like at least 10 times more. Fuck. And this is the God that the Christians worship. I mean, it's the first half of the Bible. Over half really, because they have way more books and way more crap in that half that God does that is negative than in the New Testament. And he's still not out of Dodge in the New Testament. He kills some people. He kills some of his own people there too. He's and and they were actually being dishonest. I can't think of the exact story at the moment, but they were, yeah, they were dishonest about how much money they dedicated to the church, and God killed them for it. I believe their name was Ananias and Sapphira. It was something like that. New Testament story, but yeah, a New Testament story where God kills a Christian couple for being dishonest about how much they donated. I I mean, okay, they were dishonest, but like, is that how much more worthy? Like, how is that worthy of death? And then picking up sticks on Saturday equal to that? Look, I know I was homeschooled for 12 years. I know I used to believe this shit somehow. But, going back and reading this story now that I've come out of it, how I don't know how I was okay with it. And I don't understand how other people are okay with it. Like, this is mind-blowing when you just take it at face value. God had someone brutally executed for picking up sticks. There's no other way to put it nicely. And that is where we will leave off with the Bible stories and such for this episode. I have one more quick thing to share with you, though. A new circumstance has arisen, one that has been foreshadowed for quite some time. I mentioned it a while back. Haven't brought it up much because there is really no way of knowing, no way of predicting when it would occur. But I've mentioned before, both my parents have Parkinson's disease. My father is significantly worse off. and his health has been declining over a steady time period, but it took a somewhat sharper, steady incline that we could really, there was really no way of predicting when he would pass away. He was just steadily sleeping more and eating less than was healthy. So he was kind of slowly going up and down in a like in a slowing metronome fashion. Until this past Tuesday when he passed away at roughly between 7:30 in the morning. And so I will be traveling out of state, and I have a considerable amount of writing to do, even though I've already done a lot on it. Ever since I knew my father's health was significantly declining, I started working on what I was going to say at his funeral. And I went through so many changes of what I was going to say. And each time I thought, this is the last one. This is the last draft. This is the most mature version I could come up with. And oh no. No, 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 no. I will have to rewrite it all again. Because of what I have continued to learn and understand. And that speech is what I will share on here next. I don't know when, but that will be the next video. And then I will go back to the good and the bad, the Bible, the regular scheduled programming. And yes, we will take it on from there. Why am I going to share the speech that I'm giving at my father's funeral? Well, it is the perspective that, well, actually, let me put it to you this way. Little precursor of what it basically is, what it consists of. And that is three different perspectives. Perspective of others, the general population that knew my father. The perspective of those closer to him that lived under his roof. And then the perspective of having acquired knowledge of the history that I didn't know before about my father. And just how or what I realize who he truly is or was, and how I feel towards him. How I wish things could have been. And also how I hope things will be for him in the future, even though he has passed on. And hopefully my sharing this perspective that I've gained will be able to help others find a way to forgive those who've hurt them. Because my father was he was not exactly a good man. He had some good intentions, but to call him a good man is not something that I would do. I wouldn't necessarily call him an evil or wicked man. Even though was at least a small streak of that in him, I think. But I think it was there because of how he was raised and all that. But that will be what comes out next, whenever that will be. The funeral isn't for another week, so I have some time to work on my speech and get it squared away. But I will not be doing any more videos until after that weekend. So maybe 1 or 2 weeks before that next video comes out. Hopefully you have a wonderful, wonderful time. September. Enjoy the last bit of this summer weather that we have before it gets real chilly. Take care of yourself. World's getting crazy out there. And it ain't gonna stop. So keep yourself ahead of the curve. It's the only way to survive. Stay safe, my friends, and until next time, farewell.